Paul Krueger. We are all here because we love you, obviously. And we just want you to look around the room and just take it all in. It's a serious time, Paul. Okay, let's take it seriously. Yeah.
It's a big deal.
So as some of you know, Paul retired in 2020. And in retirement, Paul, he's done a lot. I mean, it was during the pandemic. He has accomplished more than most of us accomplish in our normal everyday jobs, full-time jobs. He writes letters to the editor. He writes articles, opinion pieces. He attends many city council meetings and speaks during public comment. And even though he's not officially a journalist still, he is still holding our elected officials accountable. One, Rory, even blocked him on Twitter recently. And that, in my opinion, means, Paul, that you are doing retirement right.
So, Paul, when it comes to you, let's just say for all of you who don't know Paul, there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot of material, okay? So because of that, we're going to stipulate that you have won many, many awards. Paul doesn't like to talk about awards anyway. He appreciates them. Don't misunderstand me. He appreciates them, but he's pretty low-key. And his wife, Meg, says she wouldn't even know if he got an award unless somebody told her. That's how low-key he is. So without going into all the detail, let's stipulate that Paul has won lots and lots and lots of awards, local and national awards.
Why is Paul such a good journalist? I worked with him as well as Lynn and Jace here, Bill on the I-team for many years. Paul asked the tough questions, and he also held the powerful accountable.
Yes, he did. So how did he do that? He did it in that matter-of-fact manner, that professional way, that, you know, some of you know, that Columbo way. Oh, by the way, so that allowed for healthy discussion and debate because people let their guards down and they trusted him. As Greg Dawson, our news director, said, quote, "It also helped foster healthy discussion and debate within the newsroom about editorial decisions." So what exactly does that mean? It means, Paul would say, why are we doing that story today?
Literally every day. He was a fierce defender of our First Amendment right as the media. And Paul, you would always push to go to court no matter what to defend that right.
That's right. He would say, I don't care if it costs NBC money. NBC is a multi-billion-dollar company after all. I don't care how much it costs them. We got to go to court and fight for this. It's our job.
Paul, he challenged all of us, even our own NBC attorneys. Right, Lynn? As Bob Hansen recalled, Paul had some very animated conversations with our corporate attorneys as he fought to maintain the integrity of our reporting.
By the way, Lynn, I think you'll attest to this. As he fought with the attorneys, or argued, I should say, with our NBC attorneys, Paul would usually lose those arguments. Still, despite that, Paul, we want you to know that when we think of you, the word genius comes to mind. That's right, genius. Quirky genius, but genius nonetheless. As Marty Levine, who sits right here, as he would say, Paul knew everybody, everywhere. He knew where to get every document you might need for any and every story. And yet, on the same day, he would be unable to find his car keys to get home.
If you walked downtown or really went anywhere to Paul, to a party or traveling, he knew everyone, from the judges to the dry cleaners. Retired Judge Fred Link knew him well and says Paul never accepted the superficial and that Paul always wanted to dig deeper.
That's right. And Paul, we got to work with you, you quirky genius. We also got to become great friends with you.
I mean, I like Paul so much as a coworker. He was my mentor and my friend, and I even made him godfather to my firstborn child. That is a true story. But imagine this, Meg, his lovely wife right there, who I know very well, she and her son Paul got to live with Paul.
Imagine, everybody, those of you who know Paul. Shock, you look pained. Imagine living with Paul Krueger.
So we got to tell this story because Meg, his wife, met Paul 30 years ago, and she told us about One of their first dates. So Paul arrived a little bit disheveled, a little bit late. Yeah, I know it's hard to believe, Rory. Told Meg he had to make a phone call. He had to use her landline. There's no cell phones, of course. And he needed to borrow her car and he needed to leave right away. So hours later, he comes back and he tells Meg he had been at the Vista jail interviewing a white supremacist. They were supposed to go on this romantic beach walk together that day. And Meg asked herself, could this be a normal day in the life of this man, Paul Krueger?
Meg is taking the video right now on her phone going, It's unpredictable. Unpredictable is good. So let's fast forward to their son, Will, who, by the way, he is a law student at Yale Law School. Yeah. We're clapping for Will, not for you. That's amazing. We've all known Will, and he says that people would call his dad sneaky smart. Sneaky smart. Will says his dad didn't always look like he was on top of things. Paul looks really nice today. But let me just say that Will said, his son, quote, he was wrinkled, untucked shirt, bike shorts. He said wrinkled. Wrinkled, untucked shirt, bike shorts. And I love this, Paul. An uneven shave that gave away that he had balanced the razor and the coffee mug as he sped his way down the 163 trying to make that morning meeting at NBC7. But Will says, you, Paul, you knew how to ask those sneaky smart questions and get answers. Yes!
Will says watching his dad work was his first lesson on how to be successful. To share your expertise, treat your coworkers like family, and have a steel trap memory.
Paul, Will is right, at least in part. No, he's right all the way. You did all that for us. You shared all your contacts. When we didn't know who to call, we would go to Paul in the newsroom and we would say, how do I start this story? Whom should I call? He mentored the young and he mentored the veterans. And Paul, as for that steel memory part, the steel trap memory, as for that, you may not have remembered that the keys were actually in your pocket. Yes. And the glasses you couldn't find, they were actually on your head. That's as Jill Underwood noted for us. But Paul, we all know that you know where the bodies are buried.
So Paul, where is Nathan Fletcher right now? Chuck? Artie? You guys know? Oh, and by the way, the person that blocked Paul on Twitter recently, that elected official, that was Lorena Gonzalez. So with that, Paul, you're up. Congratulations. We love you.
Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, Rory, so much for nominating me. I actually didn't even know, even though I had given a speech for a photographer, I thought you just did 25 years and you got the award. I didn't know like you had to be nominated and people had to vote on you. So I really appreciate this honor. And I'm not going to thank individual people because there have been way too many people who have put up with me, really. That's what it is, put up with me throughout my career. And to just give you, I just want to give you an idea of how much of a burden I really was. I mean, I did a lot. It's true. I always felt like if you're not sharing what you know, you shouldn't be in this business, you know? You need to help everybody with everything they do because in doing so, you make the product better. I mean, it's just like common sense. And so I never felt anything was proprietary. But I, unlike most of you, came from a background in print media. I worked for the Reader and the Union Tribune and Time Magazine and some other publications for like 15 or 20 years before I went to work at NBC. So I kind of was in the mindset of the more you write, the more you get paid, you know, like, and at the Reader, as you all know, those stories were insufferably long and nobody ever finished them. But, you know, I got in the habit of writing long. And when Bill Ritter, who I really wish was here today, because he hired me at NBC, he was a investigative reporter at NBC in the 1980s. He's now an anchor in New York. He kind of got me this job at NBC, and so I was just doing research for him, background on stories, and I would write notes about what he needed for a story. So he said one day, he said, well, why don't you write a VO, like a voiceover for a story, see what it's like to write for TV. So I sat down at the typewriter and I wrote like a full page, like 3 minutes of stuff. And I handed it to Bill and he said, you can have any 2 sentences. And that was kind of my introduction to TV news. And it took me literally, as all of you know, I think it took me 20 years to be comfortable with writing for TV. It was such a hard transition. And all of you, everybody who worked with me, every photographer who worked with me, who was thinking, how many more interviews are you going to do for, a minute 30 package? I appreciate so much your patience and the teamwork that we had to make really good stories and really do a good job. And finally, I would like to say, thank you, Rory, for both of you for remembering the fights we had about court access. It's so super important. And they didn't tell you the story. I got so angry with one of the NBC attorneys about their quote unquote habit of cutting stuff out of stories simply because of the possibility that we might get a demand letter or get sued, that I was banned. My news director prohibited me from talking with the lawyers anymore, which I take as a badge of honor. So I would say just keep fighting the good fight, and thank you so much for the honor. I now understand what an honor it is, and I really appreciate being in the company of so many people who have done such amazing things for our industry or our profession. Thank you.